So in this video we'll focus on creating our two parallel arrays and populating them with cupcake images and number images, and also we will place them on the window so that they're in kind of almost a tabular format here. So I've gotten us started with a window, a graphics window. It's 500 tall by 600 wide. I also set up some X and Y coordinates. Notice that we're about 10 pixels in and 10 pixels down, so that would put us sort of in the upper left corner of the window with a small margin. So basically we are going to build our parallel arrays and populate them with images, and because we put things very systematically, as far as the images, we put them very systematically in their own folders, and we name them 1, 2, 3, and so on. Both the cupcakes and the numbers are named like that, so we can pretty easily do this with a loop. So I'm going to dive right in and start a for loop. I'll use a loop counter of I. That's going to be important, and we'll set it up to go from 1 to 12 because it is the 12 days of cupcakes. Okay, I always like to end my loop before I start typing in the middle. Alright, so first we will add a cupcake to the array inside of, to the cupcakes array inside of this loop. And the reason I'm starting with cupcakes is because we're familiar with Z order. Okay, and this is something that we had to contend with early on in the semester. But if I add the cupcake first and then the number on top of it, there's a Z order at play. So the cupcake will be behind the number, and that is what we want. If I were to tackle the number first and then add the cupcake, it wouldn't look like this. We would have the cupcake in front of the number. So let's begin by naming a cupcakes array. And starting right off the bat, I'm using my loop counter as the array index. So the first time this loop runs, this loop is going to run 12 times, right? But the first time it runs, I is 1. So really what I have first time through is something like this. And what will that do? That will point to the very first element of the cupcakes array. It's empty at this moment. Okay, but what that'll do, once I put the image in, which is the rest of this line, it will put the cupcake right in there. Alright, so let's continue on. Now, we can't use shapes. We've got to use the FC controls images because these are going to be clickable images, right? In a regular program, we would dive right in and start naming the image, right? Something like this. But this is different because we have subfolders now for our images, which is something we haven't done yet in this class. I have cupcakes and numbers in separate folders within the folder that the program resides. So I do have to drill down a little bit in my code. So we want to reach into the cupcakes folder. Okay, so adding something like this with the backslashes, those are important, will put us right into the cupcakes folder, this guy. Alright, now within the folder I want images like 1, 2, 3, and so on. Well, our loop counter is going to take on those values as the loop is executing. So rather than hard coding an image name, which is what we've always done up until now, we're going to construct an image name using our loop counter. So I'm going to reference I. First time through, that'll amount to a 1. Second time through, it becomes 2, and so on. But then I have to append to that the file extension. Okay, so that will add an image to the cupcakes array. Alright, now the next thing we want to do is size the image. You know how to do that, so I guess I'll use set width in this case. And whose width are we setting? Well, whoever we just put into the array. And this is how we reference that guy. Array name and then the loop counter as array index. And we'll make it about 100 pixels wide. Now, our next step is to move it into position. And you also know how to do that at this point. And who are we moving? The same guy we've been working on. And we will move it to our XY coordinates. Okay? All right, let me just, and then let me just do this. Well, let's just worry about cupcakes, and then we'll go in and add the numbers over the cupcakes. But basically, here, let me run this. I just see a pink cupcake. The pink is the last one that's in there. What happened? They're all there, but they're just all piled up on top of one another. All 12 cupcakes are here, but they're one on top of another. So what we have to do is advance the cursor, so to speak, so that it moves along and then wraps to the next line, right? So let's do that. What we'll do is, we know that the cupcakes are 100 pixels wide, so let's start by adding about 130 to X, and that'll give us a little margin in between, about 30 pixels in between each cupcake. So this will advance the X cursor, which is fine, we're off to a start, but we're still not where we want to be, right? We don't want them all one row up at the top. We want to, after 4 cupcakes, advance the Y cursor as well and wrap to the next line. So what we have to do is add an if statement. Okay, so if X makes it to a certain point, whoops, didn't want to do that. If X makes it to a certain point, for example, about here, once X is here, we're done with the top, we're done with the current row, and we want to wrap to the next row. If we started at the 1010 and then added in increments of 130, advance the X cursor in increments of 130, this is the 400 mark. So once X is greater than or equal to 400, we're ready to reset X back to 10 to get it back to the beginning and also advance the Y position. So that's what we'll do here. So we'll say if X, we'll say greater than 400. I think equal to would still put us on that line. Once again, I end my sandwich before I even begin typing in the middle. All right, so what do we have to do? We have to advance the Y cursor. If this is the case, I'm all the way over on the right there, and I want to advance the Y cursor, so we will add 130 to Y. That'll bring the Y cursor down, but also you want to set X back to 0, okay? So, or not 0, 10 is where we started, okay? Just like a cursor in Microsoft Word or when you're typing an email, what happens when you get too far to the right? It advances down and then moves all the way back to the left edge. All right, so that will take care of that. Okay, now the cupcakes look pretty good. And now what we'll do is, because this is very easy, like I said, if you can write a program with 1 array, you can write a program with 2 fairly easily. We'll do the same thing, but with the numbers. So I'm going to squeeze in here, okay, and really we just need a couple of lines, or just 3 lines. Okay, so we'll begin a numbers array. Once again, loop counter as array index. It's going to be total deja vu. What we have here, we just have to do it with numbers and it'll all fall into place. So FC controls, we're adding an image. Okay, once again, reaching into the program directory, but also drilling down into the numbers folder. The numbers folder, this guy. All right, once again, numbers are named the same way the cupcakes were. Okay, constructing the image name using our loop counter. and then adding the file extension. Okay, now we will set the width rather of the number. We'll make those a little bit bigger than the cupcakes just to make sure they cover the cupcakes completely. So we'll go ahead and set the width of the number we just created. Once again, reference that guy we just created by calling the name of the array and providing the loop counter as the array index. And let's set the width to a 150. Okay, and then finally we can move that into position to the XY coordinate, just like we did with the cupcake. Okay, so what happens is the cupcake is created and moved into position. Then the number right after that is created and moved right on top of the cupcake, and then we advance the X cursor, and then we will advance the Y cursor when it's time. All right, and there we go. So in the next video, we'll wire this up and we'll focus on the functionality. But really the hard part is behind us, creating the arrays, populating the arrays with the images, and positioning them on the window. I think that's really the bulk of this program. There are really just a few more lines of code after this.